Have you ever found it perplexing that we're a billion years more advanced than every other species on this planet? Doesn't it seem bizarre? Nobody ever mentions it. We're a billion years more advanced than dolphins or chimpanzees. Our language, our civilization, from fire, from space travel, from the internal combustion engine, seems perplexing. Doesn't it seem odd that we're the only species on the planet that seems allergic to the sun? Every other species on this planet spends all day, every day in the sun, and it poisons us. Doesn't that seem odd to you? Seems odd to me. Every other species on this planet has their equivalent. The dolphin has the chimpanzee. The dog has the cat. You know, we don't have an equivalent. It seems odd that we are so far removed from everything else on this planet, so much so that we don't seem to fit on this planet. We don't seem to be natural to this planet. We need clothes and houses and shopping malls and grocery stores. We can't survive in the wild. We're just not fit to be on Earth. And that seems odd to me. There has to be a big explanation for why we don't fit on Earth. Everything else is unlike us. We seem like extraterrestrials on our own planet. Which brings me to the beginning. Where does it start? Well, I don't know where you are in this rabbit hole we call the quest for answers. And I certainly don't want you to make the assumption that this is the answer, or that the opinions I opine are uniquely of mine and they weren't influenced by other people, because they were. And I'll take note when I can of where that was. But that's where it comes in. I would start with it. Let's start with somebody who has no background in ufology. Ufology is UFOlogy, unidentified flying objectology. UFOs, there's a lot of people who study the lore, but if you have no history in conspiracy theory, let me put it this way. It would be unfathomable and cruel if we were the only planet in the known universe that carried life. I would bet you that there are many, many, many planets that have life similar to ours, because I think the universe was seeded, at least galaxies like ours were seeded with DNA like ours, and grew from there. So life on other planets, if we're going to make that jump, if there is life on other planets, I'm going to make that jump. I don't think we're alone. I think if the universe is infinite, which it has to be, because what would the end be? A wall? What's behind that wall? More space with stars? The universe is infinite. In infinity, there is room for every possible outcome. One of those outcomes is this universe is teeming with life, meaning there's life all over the universe and in our galaxy, our own galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. And I would venture to guess that we are not the most advanced civilization that inhabits planets in the Milky Way galaxy. But I would also venture to guess that we're about 200 to 300 years away from interstellar travel. At the pace technology is advancing in and of itself, of its own accord, of its own volition, out of our own control, 300 years from now, we're not going to be more evolved or more intelligent, but we will have a vast, far superior and much larger birth of technology at our disposal that will get us from here to another star that possibly has life inhabiting one of its planets. So, if we're about 300 years away from that, to be honest, I think we're probably closer to about 80 years away from that. I would say, and if we're not the most advanced species in a galaxy teeming with life, there's probably many species on interstellar ventures throughout our galaxy, and at some point they may in fact have stopped at planet Earth. Why, you may ask? Because for them, being a billion years more advanced, it's pretty easy to just stop by another planet when you're traveling at superluminal speeds. Superluminal, super meaning above and beyond, luminal meaning light, beyond the speed of light. If you're traveling faster than light. And what did Einstein say? Don't quote me on this, but the speed of light is the universe. The speed of light is the speed limit for the universe. He was wrong. Crafts can travel at superluminal speeds. They create synthetic gravity, and they travel through space, which has no friction, at speeds faster than the speed of light. And they can travel, they can even teleport in jump rooms. And if you don't believe me, this should have made headline news instead of whatever garbage they're pumping out now. The Chinese teleported a photon last year, and it didn't make any news. So a photon has mass to it, which proves that teleportation is possible, which proves that if you want to travel the galaxy or to other galaxies like Andromeda, maybe teleportation's the way to go. Travel instantaneously. But nevertheless, at some point, there may have been a race of extraterrestrials that came to Earth. I'm here to put forth a theory I thought I came up with until I realized that Zecharia Sitchin had spent his life decoding the Sumerian texts and wrote, I don't know how many tomes on what the Sumerian text revealed about ancient ancestors of ours. But basically, my belief is that 200,000 years ago, there was a race of extraterrestrials that came to our planet before humans existed. There were primitive species, apes. I don't know if Lucy was around 200,000 years ago. They came here to harvest minerals and stuff that you can only find from remnants of supernovas like gold. You can't synthetically make it. They wanted to harvest our rich planet, and they went about doing that and got tired of doing the labor of harvesting gold from our planet, so they decided to create a synthetic race, a mixture of their DNA, other DNA, and the DNA that was natural to this planet, to create a race of beings that is the smartest of the slave race in intergalactic culture, human beings. We are an intergalactic race of slaves. We were made just smart enough to communicate, to become efficient workers, to work 40-hour work weeks for no reason at all. When a virus comes around, they tell you to stay home, making your life pointless, realizing that you never had to go to work in the first place. Human beings are an intergalactic race of slaves that were invented 200,000 years ago on this planet by a race of extraterrestrials called the Anunnaki. That's what Zecharia Sitchin, who transposed the Sumerian tablets, put forth, and that's basically what I came to conclude, that they made a huge labor force of human beings through various genetic experiments, which is probably why less than 3% of our DNA is active. They made the rest of the extraterrestrial DNA that's far superior, that would have just been offspring of theirs if they were just making clones of themselves that wouldn't want to harvest gold. So they had to mute the extraterrestrial DNA that comprises us. Then there's Bob Lazar, who worked at Groom Lake, which is a place off Area 51 where they reverse engineer extraterrestrial aircraft that lifts off the ground without propulsion, meaning we don't need to lift off the ground by taking advantage of the denseness of air. It's just by manipulating gravity. Well, Bob Lazar worked at Groom Lake where they were reverse engineering. That's where you're taking a product that is more advanced than yours and figuring out how it's made. Reverse engineering craft from extraterrestrials. One in particular was from the Zeta Reticuli star system. It's a binary star system. I think it's 62 light years away from here, in the constellation of Reticulum. So Bob Lazar said that, which differs from Zacharias Sitchin's account of the Sumerian text, which said that the Anunnaki created us 200,000 years ago to enslave us. Bob Lazar was working on reverse engineering UFO technology and came across information saying that we were the product of 65 additional additions to the genetic makeup by the Zeta Reticuli species from the Zeta Reticuli star system. So either way, that would at least cover a large portion of the looming question I started this vlog with, which is, why do we not seem to fit into Earth? And if you're not sold, I don't blame you. This is a lot all at once if you're not already into this. But there's other things that don't seem to add up. There is an anthropological lack of data between ancestors of ours that predate us and us now. Us being the human race, which is capable of pronouncing I don't know how many syllables and articulating vast quantities of sounds that other animals are incapable of doing. That huge evolutionary leap where we have communication no other animal talks about yesterday or tomorrow. We talk about time as if it could be standing still and we're just experiencing it forward. Maybe all this has already happened and our experience happens to be moving forward. We talk metaphysically. We also have a lot more gray matter, and our cranium changed, and there's not a lot of anthropological or fossil evidence for this huge change. I mean, we're missing, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of fossils that would record these huge evolutionary leaps forward for mankind. But they're missing. We have Lucy, and then we have something that's not even close to us. There's a lot missing in the fossil record. Also, if you go back to Sumeria, the Sumerian civilization between the 6th and 5th, between the 6th and 5th century BC, the Sumerian civilization was the first one we know of with a written history, with historians. So before that we have hunter-gatherers, and suddenly we have Sumeria with written language, historians, law, music, finances, debt, criminal justice, architecture. From what? Hunter-gatherers to suddenly everything we have in civilization today. That is evidence for the intervention of extraterrestrials at another time, which would be 10,000 to 6,000 years ago. Where they created things like the Towers of Giza in Egypt, that line up with the stars perfectly, even to match the slight rotation on its axis of the Earth incrementally over millennia. But civilization popped up with everything we have today, and it stayed the same way. We haven't. It had law, it had criminal justice, it had music, it had a written language, it had historians, had everything that we have today, and it came up suddenly out of nowhere. It went from nomads to full civilization, and then it hasn't progressed since. In fact, it's just deteriorated. We just destroyed more of the Earth since then. You know why it hasn't advanced? These huge jumps where we have a voice box and we're able to pronounce more syllables than any other nomadic land animal, and we have more gray matter than anything else on Earth, and we don't seem to fit here, and the fossil evidence is there. This huge evolutionary jump 200,000 years ago was extraterrestrial intervention. Same thing with the also the monetary system was in place with debt and everything. And we haven't come up with anything else for civilization. So you're telling me Sumeria had a written language, historians, money, debt, law, music, finances, criminal justice, architecture, all this stuff that we have today, and we haven't come up with one new institution? Why the jump from cave dwellers and nomads to full civilization and then no progress since? How long ago was that? 8,000 years ago? 6,000 years ago? We haven't made any progress since then. No more institutions. Nothing else. Why do we have these huge leaps that are inexplicable, and why do we not fit on this planet with everything else that's on this planet? It seems clear and evident. And if you don't believe me, think about this. Think about how fucking bizarre this is right now. The fact that you're watching me on YouTube, I look this way on tetrapedal, tetra orthopod. I have five appendages. I have a head with a brain that functions this way. There's males, there's females. We look this way, we have hair. All this stuff is bizarre. Sex. None of this, the only reason we accept it as normal is because this is all we've had since we've been born. None of this is normal. So why would extraterrestrial intervention be abnormal? It wouldn't. What we're doing right now, you watching me, is abnormal. Life is abnormal. The fact that life exists elsewhere and that it's more advanced than us and that it visited us and imposed its evolutionary philosophy on mankind, or created mankind for that matter, that's not that bizarre. I'm Irish, Scottish, Sub-Saharan African, Zeta Reticulan, and probably Sumerian, and maybe Anunnaki. But it seems to make sense. Seems to make sense because I'm the only one talking into a 4K 1080p camera with a light facing me, producing synthetic light at night, in the middle of the night, throwing off my circadian rhythms because I live inside instead of exposed to the elements, talking to this camera, this lens, from notes because I'm literate and somebody came up with a language and taught me that because my parents paid into the tax system so I could be raised in a decent school district and become literate and take notes and then convey them to you. This is weird. Extraterrestrial intervention is not weird. There are definitely extraterrestrials. There's life on other planets. And if there's life on other planets, there's probably life on millions, billions, trillions of planets, an infinite number of planets, and we would not be the most evolved of those. I would venture to guess we are the most intelligent of the slave races. We are intergalactic slaves, and that's how intelligent we are, which is why we work all the time for no apparent reason. The 40-hour work week, even though we have developed enough technology to cut it down to 14 hours a week per person, totally sufficient. Now, the interstellar arena has life dripping from the orbs that encircle flaming orbs. There's life all over it. There's life less evolved than us, like everything on this planet, by leagues. There's life more evolved than us, like the Anunnaki, who created us 200,000 years ago to enslave us, or the Zeta Reticulans, who may have created us, if you go with Bob Lazar's story. I don't know. I don't know what the truth is, but the truth is there's been intervention. We didn't come up with all this ourselves. It's inexplicable that I would be speaking into a camera, storing it on a microchip, feeding it to another microchip, and then dispersing it via cloud computing to everyone else on Earth. While squirrels are gathering nuts. And I can't go outside because the sun is poison. Think about it. Consider it. It's possible. Then we'll go into the fractional reserve banking conspiracy, which is my next conspiracy. Alright. Thanks for watching. My name's Dan McCourt. Subscribe.